Well, welcome everyone. This is Joanne Geer. I'm Executive Director for the Westchester Biotech Project. You're in the right place. We really appreciate everyone joining us today. In this format, we'll have about 30 minutes or so of presentation, and then we will take time to invite everybody that's on the call to introduce yourself, talk about the subjects brought up, any questions that you have, and really have a discussion. What we like about this format is that we often come out with ideas for future programs, challenges that seem to be common amongst different people, and different areas of interest that we can dig into. I'm going to introduce our co-founder, Michael Welling. Would you like to do a little introduction, Michael?
Absolutely. My first order of business is we need a new picture there. I look ridiculous, so let's make a note of that.
We were so happy. This was after our first symposium at the bar, and we were like, we did it. So we could get another picture, but I kind of like that.
Okay. All right. You've convinced me. So good morning, everyone, and thank you all for taking some time out of your busy day to join us here. For those of you who don't know, yes, myself and Joanne are the co-founders of the Westchester Biotech Project, a nonprofit organization focused on sort of identifying, supporting, championing, celebrating the researchers and engineers and data scientists who really drive our biotech life science community, both here in our region and, quite frankly, across the country and around the globe. When we started out with this idea, I think we had some very humble thoughts and expectations about what we could accomplish. And I will tell you, as today marks the 24th month of our existence, so our 2-year anniversary, we have identified, uncovered, and quite frankly, accomplished more already than I think I ever thought was going to be possible. And that includes not just bringing together folks in the region who are involved in this space, but creating a platform for collaboration with folks outside of this region, around the country and around the globe. And certainly today is a great example of that. On this slide here, you see some of our key programs and roundtables that sort of help drive much of our programming and agendas. I will tell you what is really exciting for us is so much of what we are out in this world, out in the community doing is in response to ideas and questions and challenges and pain points that we've heard from all of you. So certainly we welcome your input at the end of today and throughout the program, both on what you heard today and any ideas about ways that we might be able to affect change and impact the work that's being done in another way. Some of those key initiatives, as you see on the screen here, Westchester Biotech Project Europe, which is a partnership that we just launched and are really excited about what we think that's going to do in fostering collaboration between Europe and the U.S., Westchester in particular, but really all over the country. Our Westchester Certificate Program is a fascinating initiative whereby we have designed a curriculum for a laboratory certificate program where students, undergrad, and other folks will have an opportunity to participate in this program and, walk away with a certificate of basic and essential lab skills that we know, or at least identified, aren't often being taught in the classroom, and certainly the employers are looking for those skills when they hire folks day one. I'm just going to also just mention the Westchester Biotech Blueprint. This is another exciting initiative that we've undertaken, really trying to identify all of the stakeholders and all of the verticals and all of the science and all of the players in the region for the purposes of sort of trying to build a map to move everyone forward in the best possible way. We have our young investigators trying to help the young scientists, and of course our expansion space development, which is something that is really on the forefront of moving Westchester forward in our capability and ability to support this whole community as companies grow and are looking to either relocate or expand in this area, or quite frankly, from other areas as well. But as I mentioned, today is really about this building of a partnership across multiple verticals. And I'm really proud of the fact that the folks from the Mansfield Incubator have joined us as alliance partners, have identified what we're building here as something that is relevant and meaningful to the work they're doing, and opened up a dialogue between our two entities to, again, share ideas and collaborate. And of course, our friends from IBM, one of our local, we'll call it giants that we're proud to have part of us, and other friends and supporters of our organization. So I'm excited for today, and I see we've got also our upcoming programs on that slide there. Sorry. Don't miss out on joining us. We welcome ideas and all contributions. I think that's my last slide, right? So again, thank you to everyone who's participating today and joining us. Okay, you're not moving the slides fast enough, Joanne. I was way ahead of myself there.
I'm just listening to your voice. It sounds good.
I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment on this slide here and identify and thank, although I'm proud to say the partners that we have are too numerous to name them all, but this slide here represents all the folks who have supported us in one way or another, through content, through financial support, through other sources, and without their contributions, much of what we do would not be possible. And as I always say, I encourage you, if you are in need of any of the services being provided by any of these entities, or looking to embark on a new venture, I encourage and support you reaching out to all of them. And as always, we're happy to make introductions to anyone that might make sense.
Thank you, Michael. I'm just going to, Alex, I've just sent you over the presenter pop-up, so you can share your story next. We're going to hear a few presentations, and then we're going to invite everyone one by one on the call to introduce yourselves and talk about the subject and ask any questions. Alex, can you see the pop-up?
Can it start again?
Yeah.
I'm trying to hit share. Okay. So where's the pop-up? I'm not seeing.
Okay. I'm going to take back being presenter for a moment, and then I will give it back to you.
Okay.
Okay, and here it comes back to you. You should get a pop-up that says you're the presenter. Would you like to share your screen?
Yes. So, and I'm trying to hit share.
It's all right.
I'm not sure why it's not working.
It was fine before, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do the same thing I just did. Chris, I'm going to make you presenter for a minute, and then
okay,
we'll come back to Alex. Sometimes it just needs a little reboot, right?
Wait,
So
is there, whose screen is this?
So right now you should just see something that's kind of a blank screen. It says I'm the organizer and you're the presenter.
Oh, you're the presenter, but you're not sharing the screens yet. Interesting.
We want to make you this. We want to make you the presenter.
Is this? Do you see my slides?
I don't see your slides. I tell you what, this is why we do belt and suspenders. I'm going to take it back, and I will show your slides, and you can tell me when you need me to move ahead. How about that?
Okay.
Okay, well, I want to introduce Alex Margulis and Gilles Bolduc, who will speak about Mansfield BIO-Incubator. Can you see the slide now?
Yes, I can.
Beautiful.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. My name is Alex Margulis, and I run a Mansfield BIO-Incubator. I can see that we have a lot of similarities with Westchester project. So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about our current site and our plans. So we are now in a 10,000 square foot facility completed 2 years ago, and it's consisting of shared resources such as meeting area, lab, kitchen, private offices, etc. We've got both private and shared lab space, and good news is that all our private space are taken now. We are now also planning an expansion within the same building that we're currently in, and we can actually expand to up to 100,000 square feet, and we primarily be focusing on private spaces along with potentially a pilot manufacturing facilities. So this is all work in progress and will be developing as we go. So the bottom line is we'd like to grow the life sciences in this part of Massachusetts, which compared to other parts of the state is not as well served as we would like. So what we can see on the right are the pictures describing what the space looked like before, which is July 2016, rather bland. So in June 2017 was built, looked a lot nicer, but was rather empty. And now, less than 6 months ago, we've held our open house, and we could, as you can already see, we already are attracting some people. We are generating buzz. So we'd like to keep doing that. And we are hoping to develop the entire 63-acre space that the property sits on. In fact, the town of Mansfield has just told us that we could build as much as 1 million square feet of lab space. And obviously, it will be a mixture of early stage and later stage companies. So if you go on to the next slide. So basically, what our vision is to create an affordable, flexible facility when entrepreneurs can nurture their early stage ideas. And like I said before, ideally, we would like to make it as a kind of like a real-time university where companies can establish themselves, grow, mature, and also for the form a symbiotic relationship with more mature companies, CROs, and so on. And in this way, it will be a one-stop shop for an entrepreneur to start and grow their business. So, and as you can see on the right, we are advantageously located between Boston and Providence, and we are located between several universities, as well as 2 distinct life science ecosystems. So what we would like to become is we would like to become a corridor or a nexus of diverse ideas coming from both North and South, and hopefully be able to attract more foreign companies that are wishing to tap into a Massachusetts life science ecosystem at a perhaps more affordable and more reasonable in terms of a commute place where they can grow their venture. So go to the next slide. So this slide is describing how we're doing. Go back. So we provide the membership benefits and discount of world-class trade associations such as Mass Bio and Mass Medic. So we got lab space, equipment, IT, and other shared resources. You can learn more by clicking the links below. We also are doing a lot of networking events on site. In fact, Joanne was lucky enough to be at our previous one. So we would like to do networking events, educational programs, as well as attract more interns to both our companies as well as the incubator. And we would certainly like to provide the companies with the mentoring. Gilles had done a great job in running the mentoring program, and I'd like him to spend a few minutes telling more.
Thank you, Alex. This is Gilles. Thank you, Joanne and Michael, for inviting us over. This is going to be a real learning experience for all of us. Basically, as Alex has mentioned, is that we're offering a mentoring program to our entrepreneurs and the tenants that are at Mansfield BIO-Incubator. The purpose of this is to provide them with a team of experts. These experts will provide them with advice or training, different supports in areas that we find that they need. Basically, they're early stage companies, and like most scientists or business, they know their products very well, but then it's how do we take the product to the next stage, and so that's what we're working with them. So when we identify a mentee, we basically send out a questionnaire. We try to pinpoint areas that they request help, and we have a team of mentors. These mentors have various experiences, such as in financing, fundraising, project management, manufacturing, etc. And so we identify these mentors, who, by the way, volunteer their time. And so it's my job to make sure that everything goes smoothly, and we set up conference calls, or at one point if we feel comfortable enough, that we let the mentors and mentees form their own meetings. But it's my job to every now and then check on them and just to see how things are going. Let's see. So far, what I've come across for our mentees is that one of their major goals is to know how to raise funds. They have a nice prototype, but now they need an investor that will help them develop more, or to get more money to develop that and to go into preclinical trials. We also run across patents and how to go into clinical trials. In addition to this mentor program, besides having teleconference calls, we do have sponsored events on site, and so we invite guest speakers who have various experience. So if you want to visit our Mansfield website, you'll see the events that we've had in the past and the ones that are coming up. I've had the pleasure to go to quite a few of them, and I've seen all the tenants are there, and we have other entrepreneurs in the area. The guest speakers are very well accepted, and there's always a lot of follow-up questions. So they pick up, they get a lot of information that otherwise, if they were on their own, they wouldn't get otherwise. So I think the mentorship program is going very well, and I think I'll give it to Alex from here.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Gilles. That's obvious. That was a great summary for our mentor program. And at this point, if you could switch to the next slide. So we've been open for only 2 years, but despite that, we are 90% occupied. We currently serve 14 companies. As you can see, our companies raised a significant amount of money, as well as created numerous patents, as well as the jobs. We've hosted 18 educational networking seminars with as many as 700 attendees, and we are planning to do events every month, and hopefully more webinars like this. Next slide. And these are some of our resident companies. You can find out more using the link below. And these companies encompass different areas of research. Next slide, please. So some of these examples include detection of lung cancer sooner, microbarcodes for anti-counterfeiting. We got also medically sound cannabinoid delivery, opioid abuse deterrent bottle, non-antibiotic anti-infective therapy, as well as anti-epilepsy therapy. That's just an example of a few, and hopefully we get more exciting technologies incubating. And next slide, please. So we've got, I'd like to thank for our sponsors, most notably the real estate company that owns the space for donating their money to build this beautiful space and their ongoing support to help us expand, as well as other key sponsors showing below. And obviously, as we develop, we'd like to attract more sponsors and build a robust ecosystem. And to this end, go to the next slide. We certainly are working closely with the elected local officials, as well as partnering with multiple organizations, including our newest partner, Westchester Biotech Project. Next slide. And because of where we are, because of our site, I believe we are sustainable because, first of all, we can build collaborative space from inception to mature. We already have an inception space, working on more mature spaces. We offer several key perks, including growing from a bench to larger suites. We're also would like to draw from multiple sources of revenue, including rent, grant sponsorship, and programming fees. We will continue establishing industry partnerships. And in addition to that, we are also want to be sustainable in this, meaning we would like to repurpose the old unused industrial site that used to serve the 20th century needs to the one that served the 21st century needs. And go next slide. And we welcome you to contact us for any questions, or if you'd like to incubate your company at our incubator. And the information is below. Thank you so much. And I'm open to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alex. We'll be getting to questions in a little while. Please, if you have something you think you'll forget, feel free to put it into the chat box and we'll come back to it later. We're next going to introduce you to Scott Locke. And Scott, I'm going to make you presenter. Let's see how this works. If not, I have your slides. And everybody seems to be sounding very good. I would just like to say, if you're not speaking, it's a good idea to mute yourself. We haven't had any. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that because we often get lawn mowing in the backyard here. You should have a pop-up, Scott. There we go.
So from the beginning, and does that look good?
Perfect.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, Joanna and Michael, and thank you to Alex for the presentation. Briefly, I'm an intellectual property attorney. Bulk of my work is in the patent space. Many moons ago, I started out sequencing DNA one summer, which kind of dates me. But then I moved over to the legal field, and I now work with plenty of entrepreneurs and innovators of all sizes, from the startup to mid-size to your very large companies, and some I help take along that journey. I think this is such a great topic because it's a question that I'd love for more of my clients to think about earlier in their journeys, particularly when they're very exuberant about their new inventions and their new innovations. I think too often it's tabled later, so I think it's fantastic that we're talking about it today. Whenever I have my first meeting with an entrepreneur or an inventor, among the first questions I always ask is, who have you shared the information with? What have you told them? And what agreements do you have in place? And too frequently, the answer begins with, I only told my, and I get that pit in my stomach, because that's when the trouble starts to happen. And as a lawyer, I have a bag of tricks that I can fix certain problems, but premature disclosure too often is not a no harm, no foul situation. So I'd like to start with the perspective of innovation being the first step on the journey to many profitable businesses, particularly in the biotech space. And the figure on the left just illustrates a sample journey. It's, not every step applies to everybody, but it's a good cartoon that shows a lot of the different things that many of the companies are going to face along the way. And today we're going to talk about, to whom should you tell, what and when? And I'd love for people to have the mindset that if you don't have a reason to share, just pause and think twice before you do so. And there are both business reasons and legal reasons that you want to do this. And again, I appreciate we're in the 21st century, and particularly for my friends who are millennials, or even if there are any Gen Zers on the phone, sharing is what you do. You know, publicity is currency, and social media makes this very, very easy. But in the biotech space, giving into this impulse can be very problematic. You know, on the legal side, certain of the IP rights, and I'll get to them in a second, have different degrees of confidentiality required before you can perfect those rights. And if you don't follow the rules, you will lose. And sometimes, again, it's just too late. So on the one end, we have our trademarks, which you want to publicize, and that's great for use. But the other end are those patents and trade secrets that you really need to maintain the confidentiality for. From the business perspective, sometimes it's going to complement legal. The investors are going to want to know, did you perfect your IP rights? And have you done everything you need to do to protect them? And in large part, that is keeping things confidential as your trade secret or until you hit the patent office. But be mindful, there are a lot of business reasons to keep things secret, even if they're not necessarily legal reasons to do it. If you think about your computer code, which hopefully the next speaker will talk a little bit about, your copyright rights attach as soon as you create your code. You know, you have them at that moment. You don't have to go to register them. You don't have to put notice. You have the copyright as soon as you create it. But you can imagine for business reasons, there are plenty of times you don't want to share that code because you don't want to inspire people. And if you are an IP court watcher, be mindful that over the next year, the Supreme Court is going to hand down a very big case, Google and Oracle, where they're going to decide just the extent of copyright rights in your code and the fair use of other people's copyrights. But I also want to be mindful that the competitors are watching you. They're watching what you do, and when you make something public, they know the direction you're going and will often try to leapfrog over you. And although the first mover advantage is not as great as it used to be because it's very easy to copy and duplicate what other people are doing, there still is some advantage to being the first one out there, and you want to control the timing for that. So moving into how do you start protecting the confidentiality, the nuts and bolts of it. You know, often you want to put in technological safeguards, and these are things that most people use. It's passwords, they limit access to information. If you're a certain age, you know that people used to actually have physical fences, and they would have security guards to prevent people from coming in and out. But that's all changed when we live in virtual environments and people work from home and they work remotely, and the companies are across the globe. But the key that most people have in place are those non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements, and I like them. I encourage people to use them. They're readily signed by your employees, your independent contractors, your potential business partners, your manufacturers, and your distributors. And as a practical matter, most of them are pretty much the same. Every lawyer you meet has his or her own form, but they're essentially say you won't share what you learn if it's confidential. You start to see a little negotiation over how long you have that obligation for. We used to make it indefinite to keep things secret, but there's been a lot of pushback from the bigger companies, so don't be surprised if you see it only to do it for a couple of years. The real problem with the confidentiality agreements is that they're only as good as the person who breaches them. So if the person discloses your confidential information, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And all you really buy is a lawsuit. You can try for an injunction, but often it's too late. You can try for damages, but unless they've got deep pockets, that doesn't really get you very far. And more often than not, again, it's the individual who takes or discloses your information. It's not the competitor that's doing the espionage on you. So the key lesson is really you want to know who you're dealing with before you start sharing the confidential information, even if you have those agreements. And the last point are the investors, which one of the previous speakers mentioned that a lot of the startups are interested in. Often investors do not sign these agreements. And as a lawyer, I want them signed, but I want to be appreciative that you don't want the tail to wag the dog. If it's a reputable investor or money person, vet them first. But if they refuse to sign and you need them for the money, you can't let the confidentiality obligation hold that up. The two key IP issues that we talked about with confidentiality are involving patents and trade secrets. And again, in the biotechnology industry, your patents are usually one of the most important assets that you have, and it's the majority of the worth of your company generally. These are the rights that prevent competitors from using your invention. And they're great because they give you a chance to develop the market while to some extent preventing competitors from coming in. And they also at times can help get you licensing fees. Additionally, they're key when you want the investors, again, because they recognize patents as assets. They can evaluate them. They can determine their value. They can invest. They can take an interest in them. So they're the asset that you have that's most readily recognizable. The things you need to know in terms of confidentiality is you always want to get to the patent office first. For most of the world, if you make it public before you get to a patent office, you lose all chances of rights. And that's generally for most industrial countries outside of the US, which is most of the market for many biotechnology inventions. You're going to lose all value. So again, you want to get to that patent office quickly. You only need to get to one, and there are treaties that you can leverage your first filing date off of, but please don't disclose before you think about getting to the patent office. Here in the US, we have a 1-year grace period that if you disclose and someone copies after that disclosure and derives it from you, you can still get US rights. But that's very hard to prove, and you really don't want to be in that boat if you don't have to. If you're in a world with the FDA has its own procedures for keeping things confidential, but as you start testing your products and you have to work with the FDA for testing, there are certain steps you can take to maintain confidentiality and to have the subjects maintain confidentiality so you don't destroy patent rights. So ideally, again, you get to the patent office before the FDA. In terms of process, your applications are kept secret for 18 months, so there is an extra window of confidentiality, but be aware after that they will become public, regardless of whether you ultimately get a patent, so your competitors will see it. And that's good and bad for you because you can see what your competitors are doing if you're monitoring. The flip side are those trade secrets. And trade secrets are those confidential pieces of information that really have business value and that aren't publicly known. So they're a subset of what you might consider confidential. And you'll see agreements say confidential information, including but not limited to trade secrets, won't be shared. Really, you'll never know if something you have qualifies as a trade secret until you have to sue on it. But as a matter of practice, you want to take all the steps to protect it. And that's going to be involved in limiting access, labeling a trade secret, keeping records of what is a trade secret. The last slide I want to move to are the legal requirements. So this is beyond what do I want to share and to whom can I share it, to when do I have to keep it confidential. And this slide is incredibly cluttered because the rules and the laws are changing really fast. I was very happy to see on Alex's slide that he mentioned the Mansfield project is HIPAA and GDPR compliant, because that's critical. If GDPR are the rules in Europe for keeping private, big fines have already been assessed against the major companies. This is when you have other people's data. If you're one of my friends on the West Coast, you know California passed its Privacy Act of 2018 last year. From the business point of view, many people complain it's draconian. From the consumer's point of view, many people are very excited about it because it gives data back to the consumers. It's not supposed to go into effect till next January, and nobody expects it to go into effect as enacted. Everybody thinks it's going to be revised, but you need to watch it because as California goes, the rest of the nation is going to go, because you're going to have to comply with those standards if you're anywhere in the country. So the key takeaway with this is you're going to need consent for whatever you do with data. You want to be clear about the consent. You want to be clear about the records that you have. As a matter of practicality, a lot of this is going to be outsourced. You'll see a lot of industries that are already starting to grow, but you want to be mindful of the ones you use to protect the data, either your customer data or your subject data. That's a lot of information. So Joanne, I think I'm going to throw it back to you.
Terrific. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to take back the screen, and next we're going to hear from Dr. Hassan from IBM. Ayo.
Quick introduction. I am Ayorinde Hassan. I work at IBM Research. I work with a bunch of researchers who do a lot of research work, and so we have a lot of intellectual property patents, code, models, software know-how, right? And I work in a department that helps IBM generate income and strategic partnership from all of this IP, right? So, and as background, I have a Ph.D. in chemistry. and intellectual property management, a master's in intellectual property management markets. So, all right. So let me quickly get into the discussion, right, about to share or not to share. I'll preface everything I'm going to say by saying that I'm not an attorney and I did not stay at the Holiday Inn Express last night. So if you would have to contact an attorney, an IP attorney like Scott at the proper time, right? So, but what I'm planning on doing is giving a perspective from the business side of things, right? And while I would like to give a lot of considerations and sort of implications, I don't want to fit like a 50-pound potato in a 5-pound bag, right? So I'm looking to these things for further discussion or hope that they engender more interest in the listener to look up a little more. So I'll start by making a supposition here that the question is not whether to share or not to share, right? When to share, how to share, and the proper means and procedures for sharing to protect your IP, right? I think in this space, capital intensive environment and technology-based environment like biotech, you would have to share at some point, right? But the question is, how do you properly protect what you share, right? And I think one other thing that is pretty common with people who are looking to start a business is sometimes people have great ideas, but it never goes anywhere because they're worried about, I don't want to talk to my brother-in-law, I don't want to talk to this person, I don't want to talk to that person because I don't want them to steal my idea. So the fear actually paralyzes you to the point of inactivity, right? And as an entrepreneur, you have to get to a point where you could share, right? It's be careful, not be fearful, right? So get to a point where you could share with knowing that it's okay to share. So okay, so I would say I'll divide my talk into several parts. So whether to share, why to share, when to share, and when you decide to share, what do you need to do, right? And I will share, pun intended, a few resources as we go along, right? So the key to protecting your IP, whether you share or not, is to determine ahead of time what your strategy around your IP is going to be, right? So Scott talked about that a little bit, right? Relate your IP strategy to your company strategy. I'm not making an argument about whether it should be alignment or it should dictate your strategy, but it should be a feedback loop, right? Get clear upfront if you want a patent protection or trade secret, right? Why is it important to you to keep this as a secret or to patent it, right? So, the general business kind of thing about either you block a competitor or you run, right? We keep things trade secrets and you just kind of innovate rather quickly, or you team up. Those are all reasonable business strategies, right? But it depends on where you are in the landscape, right, and where your IP is. So what I'll say about working with large companies, I consider the issue of IP potential to be the same, whether you're dealing with a SME, like a small, medium enterprise, or a big corporation. It's only amplified when you're dealing with a big company, right? And I think usually startups don't spend money on IP because they think it's a lot of work upfront and it's a lot of money involved, right? But I think you could generate a robust intellectual property position, right? Working with a patent, an IP counsel at the beginning, at the outset, right? To figure out what you need to do, right? And there are ways you could kind of minimize what you're spending, right? Because I think Scott already talked about that. There are situations where you could file a provisional patent application, right, this year, file like a PCT, a patent corporation treated next year, and then you nationalize, pick the countries you want to file in 18 months later. So you could stagger out the cost, right? And in between that time, you could actually license it out to somebody else, or you could have partners that could potentially finance these things, right? And also you could get help from outside patent organizations, right? So in this area, like in most places, you have law schools, right? They have patent clinics, right? You have a USPTO, the United States Patent Trademark Office, has a patent pro bono program, right, for independent investors and small businesses, right? If you qualify, you could get legal help to file a patent, right? So the cost and the time it takes should not prevent you from really thinking about these things upfront, right? You have to really take a look at protecting your IP. Okay. So I think I already mentioned, regardless of if you choose to share or not, take action early, right? It requires proactive steps on your part, and you have to do it early. Waiting for too long to file a patent could be something you cannot recover from. And I think Scott already talked about letting out your trade secret become public and stuff. So I wouldn't go too much into premature disclosure. I think Scott talked about that already. So be careful at what stage you're disclosing what you're disclosing. Even just showing things at trade shows, right, could be a disclosure, right? So there are several reasons to protect your IP. I think part of the point here is that Ocean Tomo did a study that, say like in 1975, the part of a company, what accounts for the market value of a company in 1975, they looked at the intangible assets, right? The IP, it was only 17%. In 2005, that moved to about 80%, right? Now, back in 2015, that was about 84% of the S&P 500 market value of a company is based on the intangible assets. This shows how central IP is to the business strategy, right? So, and it's even much more important for a startup. Sometimes the startup, the IP, the idea you have is actually the business, right? Also, the fact that the patent actually allows you to get funding. It helps with funding, right? It helps with acquisition. You could use it as a vehicle for collaboration, right? So all of these are good reasons why you should strive to get protect your IP and not let it out. So now quickly, I'll go to reasons why you might want to share. I think in general, getting the knowledge to produce cutting-edge technologies take a lot of time and money, right? So if you have IP, you could use that as a vehicle for collaboration, right? You could take advantage of other companies' experience, and you can develop new products faster and cheaper than you would if you had to do it from scratch yourself. You can leverage the deeper pockets of, a market reach of a medium-sized or big corporation, right? And that could be coupled with the innovation and scrappiness of your own startup company, right? And then you end up sharing the cost. And also sometimes it just allows you to gain access to complementary assets, right? Things that could end up helping you, right? I know companies have established market distribution channels or manufacturing capabilities that you might not have on your own, right? And you could generate revenue through non-product sales, right? So royalties, licensing, and contract research. So I was planning on, I think we're running late. So I was planning on covering all the different kind of ways you could work with a big company in terms of patent licensing, technology licensing, development, collaboration, joint venture.
I think it's a good idea. Why don't you go ahead and finish that thought, because I think that's would be very interesting for everyone.
Okay. So basically, I think so if you have patents, right, in your startup, right, you could actually license that out, right? So you're giving the owner, like you as the owner of the IP, you're allowing the other company or other companies to use the IP, right, in exchange for money or another value. It could be in exchange for equity in your company. It could be exchange for some form of value, depending on what you negotiate with the company, right? And then that gives the other party the ability to make, use, and sell and import your technologies based on the IP, right? Usually that doesn't give them access to technological expertise or additional knowledge, right? Now, on top of that is what you have when you say technology license, which is you're licensing the actual technology, a piece of technology, hardware, software, process, right? And then you're giving them the instructions necessary to operate that technology, right? And then you have another piece, which is the development collaboration agreement, a joint development where the startup and the corporation agree to work on a project together, right? And then you have another one, which is a joint venture, which is an extended development agreement, right? It's sort of like it's much larger in scope. It's not one particular development agreement is one particular project, right? In contrast, a joint venture covers a longer term partnership, and they're broader in scope, and they're usually not limited in time, right? And sometimes corporations will often propose these joint ventures to start up as a means for them to expand into new geographical areas or new product areas, right? Or as a strategic move into a parallel sector, right? So sometimes there are good reasons for corporations to want to do just joint ventures with startups as well. So I think regardless of if you decide to do licensing in terms of patent license or technology license, or you're doing a joint development, I think I would like to point to a few things that you have to do to protect your IP when you go through this arrangement. So I would say in general, I think Scott talked about this a little bit already. Before entering into negotiation, it's advisable that the parties sign a confidentiality or non-disclosure agreement, right? Interestingly, you'll probably run into some others here, right? Most big companies would not, the origination of the NDA is a problem, right? Most big companies would prefer that you use their own NDA. They wouldn't want to sign your NDA, right? So there are a couple of issues here. There's this issue of IP contamination. So I'm working on some things in my lab in the back room, right? And you come to me with your technology and you say, I have this great technology, right? I don't want a situation where you could come back later on and say, oh, I stole the idea from you, even though I was already working on it. So typically, I wouldn't want to hear the idea because I don't want to contaminate my IP, right? Also, if you give me an NDA, it requires effort from my part to kind of have my attorneys look through it, right? As opposed to if I already have a standard kind of thing that I use, then I can say, okay, here you go. The onus is on you. And so smaller, big companies would probably prefer that you use their own CDA, right? So, but I would say that you could use their CDA, but I would say just pay attention to the terms, right? There's not a problem in using their CDA. It's just a matter of looking at what terms they are giving you, right? So how do you get them to sign a CDA, right? There's always a business mechanism to this, right? Because if they're legitimately worried about you contaminating their IP, they probably don't want to hear the pitch, right? But what you would do is you would give them a pitch with a focus on the benefit of your idea, right? Not how it functions or its features, right? This also helps with venture capitals and incubators and stuff sometimes, right? The moment they're a little more willing if you pick their interest and then say, oh, do you have some sort of protection for this idea you've shared with us that has a value add to our business? You say, oh, maybe I have a provisional patent application, right? They say, oh, can we see it? And then you say, okay, yeah, I think at this point, could you send me your CDA? I would like to sign your CDA, right? So that could be a way to get around the whole issue of big companies not wanting to sign your CDA or even any CDA, right? When they show interest based on the features, the value add that you've shown them, then you say, okay, let me see your CDA, and I will sign your CDA. So, but just be mindful of the confidentiality obligations of the CDA that you're signing on, the NDA that you're signing, right? Terms could include what information you're sharing, right? Actually, you need to be careful about what constitutes your own confidentiality information, right? Make sure you're clear on the subject of your confidential disclosure, what you're disclosing to them, right? Sometimes it's what happens to the information after the negotiation, after the talk, right? What is the duration of the agreement? Do you have to return materials? Do they have to return materials to you, right? Do you have rights to things that make sure that you're not inadvertently giving them IP rights, implied IP rights to what you're describing to them, right? I'm just describing this information to you. I'm not giving you an implied license based on the CDA, right? I think quickly, let me go through.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? Let's start to bring in some of the other people, and let's see what kind of questions they have, and then there probably will be an opportunity for you to go into even more depth. I can see almost everyone's name here, and I'm just going to first I'm going to invite Alex. Do you have any initial thoughts or questions for Io, and for Io or Scott?
Yeah, sure. So that's a very comprehensive presentation. The one thing that I want to kind of like ask is, what I see people do at our incubator, they kind of impromptu start talking to each other. I think by and large, from what I had observed, they generally are mindful by what they're saying. So in other words, I haven't heard anybody really divulging their secrets. But the question to both of you would be, is like, can you tell me what they can tell each other? Because in this way, they may form some collaboration in a way that they wouldn't have expected. If my question makes any sense.
Well, does it make sense to think of it as you were describing, Io, to make your pitch around the benefits as opposed to how it's done? Is that a safe area to be able to talk about?
Yes, that is, but I'm wondering if Alex's question is actually a more general, more common thing in an incubator setting where it's a bunch of entrepreneurs and they just discuss back and forth, right? I think that is the question, right? So
Yes.
I think in that setting they're probably a little less worried or not thoughtful enough or careful about what they're discussing because everybody thinks, okay, I'm in this space with another entrepreneur, right? I think generally it's a balance, right? There's always a legal underpinning and there's a business implication, right? So the idea on its own, it's not going to execute itself. So I think the problem is not that you share the idea, it's what you're sharing with it in what setting. And I think in that kind of setting, people are not usually looking to steal your ideas, right? But at the same time, I think it's a question of education, right? What I've seen with some other incubators or accelerators is that they actually have a resident IP person that educate people about the proper ways of kind of discussing these things, right? So that even in that space, you're not just talking freely because you think you amidst friends, right? And so that could be one way. It's educating on the proper protections, right? What are the things that if you just say out loud, that is the hand, and you might not be able to call that back, right? So I think it's probably offer a service to your clients in terms of getting them to understand the implications of just talking freely about these things, right? But I think a piece of that is you still want that free flow of ideas back and forth. It's just I guess if they have privity between the members, that might work too. If they have some sort of implied CDA kind of understanding between members, that could also work.
That's interesting. Scott, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I thought that was really an excellent answer. I would just echo the point that it's not so much that I find that people would intentionally steal, it's they inadvertently pick up and don't realize where they're getting it from and incorporate what they learn.
Yeah.
The more similar the businesses are, the more likely that is to happen. And it is that great balance you just spoke about of wanting to share and learn from each other and bounce ideas off. But the emphasis, and I think that the default has to be, I got to get to the patent office, think about whether I need to get to the patent office first, just in case. It's really the same issue when the vendors come in and see something and pick it up. You just don't know. I mean, the default is if they just talk about it, it's not really going to be a public disclosure that's going to invalidate. It's when the people hear it do something with that information, even with the best of intentions.
So, but would then signing a CDA be kind of like a guardrail or some type of a protection? So, like,
So
okay,
it would
but
put people.
if by accident somebody says something, would it be kind of like prudent to just say, okay, now that we talk about it, to safeguard ourselves, let's sign a CDA.
So the CDA would be helpful to remind people. It keeps on their knowledge that they shouldn't be talking about what they learn, and it's not going to hurt. That everything globally, everybody that you learn from everybody else here, you have an obligation to keep confidential. It can just be a term of the incubator. It doesn't prevent the risk when somebody breaches a CDA, even unintentionally.